To have passion in life is everything.
What's your Everest?
Oh,
Is it
yeah.
that 200-inch buck?
They just look so impressive when they're wide.
Especially running away.
Welcome to this week's episode of Eastmans Elevated.
It's like a think tank for outdoor activity.
Sounds exactly like my hunting. Just always thinking about it, always trying to evolve it and make it better.
Here's your host, Brian Barney.
Yo, what's happening, guys? Got a brand new Eastmans Elevated for you. So on today's podcast, I have back on my friend Dan Pickar. So Dan and I work together over at Eastmans. I'm just super impressed by Dan's consistent success. As a bow hunter like me, bow only, and man, he just gets it done on a bunch of different species in a bunch of different habitats. And the Eastmans joke around, call us the bow hunting brothers, as we're always sitting together, always visiting about bow hunting. And today we got to record the conversation. So it's a great one. We talk all about mule deer. We talk about the mule deer course, but it's not a big promotion for the course. There's really some useful information that you can use in your mule deer hunting this season and hopefully helps you be more successful. But we are really proud of this mule deer course and putting it together. I work with Dan on this. We've been working together for probably a year on this thing. So we refer back to it quite a bit, but a great conversation with Dan. I think you guys will really enjoy it. I want to thank my sponsors for today's show. I want to thank Kryptek. Kryptek builds technical mountaineering hunting gear, and I have the best system I've ever had put together. They have absolutely everything from early season to late season and everywhere in between. So these hot weather hunts, I've been using the Sonoran shirt, the Sonoran pants, which breathe really well. They have great gaiters. They've got great rain gear from Scholler Fabric. They've got pit zips to get rid of heat. I'm also using a new set of pants that has zips on the side of them to let heat out. Man, those things have been great. They have puffy pants, great puffy jackets, hooded gear, hooded sweatshirt, absolutely everything I need to hunt every season. And I also love their camo patterns. They've got altitude, which blends in really good with the timber and the darks. They've got this Obscura transitional that I've been using lately that I really like for open terrain. So use this on my Nevada mule deer hunt, my antelope hunt in open country, used it in Hawaii, and I look, and man, it just blends in perfectly with all these different open terrain habitats. So really impressed by it. If you guys are in the market for any new gear, make sure to go check it out over at Kryptek. I also want to thank Black Rifle Coffee Company, building the best coffee available. So they have their coffee subscription, which they'll send you a new bag of coffee every single month, which I've been a part of for the last year, which I really enjoy. They just have really good roasts that taste really good. They also have their instant coffee. So this is what keeps me alive during hunting season. Their instant coffee is actually freeze-dried real coffee that you mix into the water. Tastes good. My stomach and gut feels really good on it. It's the best instant made, so make sure to pick some of those up for your hunts. They also have some tea bags that you add in. Those are good as well. I've used those for hunting season. But just great coffee, a great company that supports our outdoors and hunting lifestyle. And we want to support them wherever we can. So you can put in the promo code Brian. That'll save you a little bit off the subscription there and hopefully help you to get some good coffee in your life. I also want to thank Black Ovis. So Black Ovis is a new sponsor to Eastmans Elevated, but they just offer all the best gear. They offer camos, solids, they offer Kryptek. A lot of our best sponsors, they have their gear there. So you can shop there. They have a great point system where every dollar you spend or every point you get equals a dollar that you can spend on future purchases. They give you these bonuses when you purchase things from their site. They're a great company. They're hunters as well. I know I talked to Marcus in there. He's got a good Utah elk tag he's looking forward to, but just a great company. They have arrow ID, so they can help you with arrows. They also have a promo code that'll save you 10% if you put in Elevated 10. Get you 10% off your order, save you some dollars so you can get ready, and absolutely everything you need for hunting season. So thanks to those guys for their support. And also thanks to Camo Fire. Camo Fire has a bunch of good deals. In fact, 80 new hunting deals every 24 hours. They got some great stuff, great gear that comes up on it. Make sure to go check out the app, Camo Fire. I know a lot of guys love this app and get a lot of stellar deals on good hunting gear, so check that out as well. And with that, man, let's get into this podcast. So over at Eastmans, we've got some new Beyond the Grids hitting. Be on the lookout for those on YouTube. I have some good new hunts that are coming up on there. So does Dan Pickar. In fact, he just had this muley hunt drop from last year's Montana hunt. We talk about it in the podcast. Go check that out. You can check out that muley school. Just search Eastman's Mule Deer course, and it'll come up, and you can take a look at that as well. It's sure to cut your learning curve by years. Really proud of the product that we turned out and going to continue to add content to it. So really proud of that. Check that out at Eastman's. Check out our magazines, Eastman's Bowhunting Journal, Eastman's Hunting Journal. And with that, let's get into this podcast. So my bow hunting brother, Dan Pickar. I'm your host, Brian Barney. Eastman's Elevated. Here we go. All right, got my good buddy Dan Pickar on the line. So Dan and I have been working really hard on this mule deer course, and it's a vision we had that we came up with. And then we worked away all winter long trying to find a format, a place to host it. And, man, I just can't thank you enough, Dan, like figuring out the technical side and how we're going to launch it and put it on. It's doing good. We're getting some great feedback.
Yeah, it's definitely been a monster to get up and live, and it's a video course. There's well over 100 videos now. And so, yeah, very extensive, but great feedback, and there's just so much information there. And, you know, we tried to really focus on mule deer on this course specifics, like from A to Z on mule deer. And then, we always have plans to expand on this course too, and talk about wilderness survival and all the basics to just being able to live out there. And there's just so many things that go into making your hunt successful for a mule deer buck. And I feel like it's content that you'll just never run out of things to talk about.
Yeah, and I think for every skill level, too, all the way from beginner to expert, you're going to pick up tips and cut your learning curve. And when you think about experience, like me and you have been hunting mule deer for, at least to date myself, the last 20 years, I've just committed my life to hunting mule deer in as many places, as many different seasons, different habitats, and a lot of this learning is done by trial and error. Like you have to mess up all these stalks and mess up shots, and eventually you start to become proficient at it. And then for us to put down, everything we know about mule deer from A to Z, they're definitely going to cut the learning curve by multiple years by taking the course. And I think that's the beautiful thing about it, is that they don't have to make all those tough mistakes or those hard mistakes. Like, sure, you have to gain experience too, and that's in the course, but you can really apply a lot of these lessons we've learned throughout the years. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things about it.
Yeah, definitely. Cutting the learning curve, you couldn't have said it better. I mean, that's the whole point of this. We're trying to convey our experiences, and that's why I really enjoyed putting together the hunt strategy section. This is the narrated hunt section, and specific details of what we're doing on stalks. And sometimes you miss, and sometimes you spook the buck, and other times you make a great shot, and everything in between. And I think that's kind of really where the rubber meets the road, and where it's tough to really get good at that, because there's so much out of your control, and it just takes experience. It takes being out there and doing it to learn. That's, the best way to learn. And so anyway, with this hunt strategy section, that's where we're really trying to help guys cut the learning curve. And yeah, whether you're a beginner hunter or you've hunted mule deer for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, I think there's going to be something that you'll pick up and learn in every section. And I know you're just like me, Brian. We're students of the game, and we're still learning too. We're learning all the time. Every hunt is new, and there's always something to learn on every hunt that a guy can go on.
Yeah, man, that's it. I find myself getting lost in the course when I'm reviewing it, and even though we came up with the curriculum and what we're going to discuss, like I find myself getting lost in the information, and a lot of it reminds me of the things that I need to do on the hunt. Like a lot of times you say it or you teach it, but it's also a good reminder before we go on these hunts. And you think about stalking mule deer, like when you first start out. I mean, you may have to go on multiple hunts just to get a stock on a muley buck, or, even a best case scenario, you're really only going to get 2, 3 stocks, maybe 5 at the most if you're really into mule deer for each hunt. And so you think most guys are doing a hunt a season, and we've compiled the information from hundreds of stocks on mule deer, all the way from the desert to the high country to badlands to the breaks to the foothills and everywhere in between. And I think everybody can learn from those stocks, learn from those failures, learn from those successes. And so, yeah, I definitely think you can cut that learning curve by 4 or 5 years, or maybe even more, that you're going to gain that experience just by going through the course. And a lot of it is like knowing what to look for, knowing what a good opportunity is. Am I looking to stalk a buck in his bed? Am I looking to stalk him in his feet? Well, it depends which season you're hunting. It depends how thick the cover is. And so, there's like all these nuances to it that we've tried to put in the course. And just like you said, we're students of the game. And I love the narration of the live stocks that you were able to put together and send me some of my hunts and have me narrate some of those. I think those are great learning tools. But just like you said, we're always learning and going to be able to continue to add to this course. And even this year, you gave me this extensive shot list of things we need to get. And I find myself on these hunts going, oh, this is important information. Let me film a quick clip about this, and I'll make a note for Dan, and we'll add this to the course. So, man, I just couldn't be more excited about it. I think it's awesome, and I think we can just continue to expand, and we'll be able to expand to different species. Like I know me and you both love to chase elk, and people love to hunt antelope. And in fact, thanks for getting on early today. You might make me an antelope hunt for the afternoon. But dude, I had so much fun putting this together with you. You're such a great hunter and such a great teacher, man. It's so much great information.
Yeah, it really is. It was a lot of fun. I was joking with Ike about that the other day, is that, when you're putting material together, whether it's, a written piece or a video, it's just fun because, we get to do this for a living, and it's a lot of work too, but it sure is just a fulfilling and something, just different, and it's fun content.
Oh, it's so fun. And then we got to get Guy Eastman on it, too, which is just a wealth of knowledge. That guy loves to hunt big muley bucks, and he turns them up year after year. And he is more rifle specific, as me and you are more bow specific. So it was good to have him in there to talk about a lot of those rifle seasons. Like I know, me and you know rifle hunting, and we do rifle hunts, but really that's Guy's forte. And I like joke that he's like the Oracle of the West, just because he's been doing it for so many years, retained so much information, and so articulate. Like, how fun was it to hear him speak, like at those speaking engagements we did this summer?
Yeah, no, he calls himself the old guy around here now, which it's funny to hear him say that. But yeah, he's just been doing it for so long, and I've been hunting with him going on 10 years now, and we've been on some crazy hunts together where, I've filmed for him, and yeah, just rifle hunting, which it's been, some of these tags that he's drawn over the years have been awesome, and we've on some great adventures, and yeah, just a wealth of knowledge and so many years of doing it. I mean, his first trip up into the high country in the Grays, when he was a teenager. And so, yeah, it was fun to include him on it. And he's always has several bits of wisdom that he's dropping, and yeah, it never gets old. I love the stories too.
Yeah. Oh, I can't imagine. going into the grays like back in the day when he got to hunt it, or when his dad Mike got to hunt it. But some of the things that he's seen through his eyes have to be amazing, and I've been able to see some amazing things, and I know you have too. Like, we're in the new age of hunting, where it's the information day and age, where there's a lot of information out there, and you can take a lot of this information and apply it to your own hunting. And that's pretty much how I learned, was like reading, Mike Eastman's book and David Long and, all these guys that kind of came before me. But when I started bow hunting a lot of these mountain ranges, there wasn't a lot of guys doing it, where now, there's a little bit more hunting pressure, but that's good. It gives us more, like, it's it's easier because we have information. It's more difficult because there's more pressure, but you can still just go out and find your own experience in every one of these mountain ranges in every one of these states. And I think, like, that's one of the important pieces in our course, is like a lot of good bow hunting is being where the humans aren't, being where the pressure isn't. Like, the deer get pressured somewhere. And so if you can figure out where those places are and focus your effort in there, like, you're going to get stalks, you're going to get plays, you're going to find your own experience. And I love that piece in the course where we're talking about pressure.
Yep. Yeah, it's a huge part of it. And I mean, you preach about it all the time too. And just those bigger age classed animals, you don't see them very often close to areas that have human activity. They just have a tendency to stay away. And if they are close, they stay in the timber or the cover, and they're nocturnal, but they just have that, that sixth sense. And that's probably why they're 7, 8, 9 years old. And so, yeah, there's so much to it. And it's actually funny. I was editing up another video for the hunt strategy section, and it was an early season rifle hunt with Guy. There's only 50 tags, low pressure, and it was an August 15th opener. So, I mean, you can imagine hunting giant mule deer bucks in their summer pattern velvet with a rifle. And there's just not a lot of pressure in this unit, plain and simple. And we found the biggest buck right behind an alfalfa field that was right by the highway. But that's the difference between a very low pressured unit and a general unit, or, a unit that has, triple digit tag numbers in it. And he ended up killing the buck, and it was as easy as any rifle hunt could have been. I mean, for lack of better terms, they're hitting this alfalfa field. They bed up in the BLM during the day, and we ambushed them when they were headed back towards the field in the evening. And I was looking at some of the footage and reviewing it, and I'm videoing Guy, and these bucks file by us at like 40 yards. And Guy's like, "Are we crazy for passing that buck up?" And it's a great typical. He's kind of boxy, and he's kind of a basket buck, a little narrower. But yeah, I mean, anybody in their right mind, me or you, wouldn't even have hesitated on shooting that buck. But we knew there was a bigger one in there because we saw him that morning at about 1,000 yards away, and he ended up getting them. But yeah, it's funny. Every unit's different. And some of those units that have such little hunting pressure, to get to hunt those type of units maybe once a decade, it's definitely a treat. And it definitely puts things into perspective for you, how hard it is on those general tags and how much you have to endure to, get a solid 4-point these days.
Well, and I think about it too, Dan. Like, there's so many guys that are working so hard out there that are willing to backpack, that are willing to put in the miles, that put in the elevation. And I think to myself, like, what separates me from these guys? Like, sure, I'm willing to work hard, I'm willing to put forth the effort, I'm willing to grind day after day. But it's like this whole combination of skill set that goes into it, and what Guy has in spades is hunting knowledge, And I also think that's what separates us as well, is the last 20 years. As much as we get to bow hunt, as many different places as we get to bow hunt, as many different species we get to bow hunt, like, you just learn. And so, I think there's guys that are working just as hard as me and probably harder, but it's like putting your effort in the right places. It's figuring out where those deer are. And you talk about those unpressured zones, but even in the general seasons, or like I just got done hunting one of the most popular units around. Like there's a bunch of guys, and guys talk about pressure, but I'm able to find these oases where these deer get pressured too, or where guys don't get. And, for me, it's like dropping down off the ridge and dropping a mile down off the backside where there's no access and getting down. And sure, bucks like these alpine basins and like to summer up in there, but they start dropping to secondary living when they shed their velvet, when the feed burns off. They'll also drop to secondary living when they feel pressure. And so with so many bow hunters hunting the ridge and the tops of these alpine basins, these bucks drop into these sage draws, and they're still in rough and rugged country, but now I can get into these places where I never see a human, and it's almost like the bucks are unpressured in there, and then I can get stalks and eventually, make something come together. So like it's so multifaceted to be a good bow hunter. It's not just being a good shot. It's not just being in good shape. It's not just putting forth the effort. It's not just mental toughness. It's also your smarts. It's also your e-scouting. It's also like there's just all these skills that go into it. And so like to be able to put this course together with you and like put together this multifaceted approach to hunting mule deer, I think it's so beneficial for guys. So proud of what we put together, man. That's so cool that we dreamt that up and then spent so much time working on it, making sure we got the information, continuing to add to it. Like I'm really proud of our finished product.
Definitely. Me too. It was a long time coming, and as you know, I mean, we were busting our butts on it all spring and just getting the content together. And it's a fluid thing. There'll always be, things to add to it and update. And I always want to make it better. It's just like anything, right? You release it and you see things, that you're like, man, I could do that better. I want to add a little bit on that. So it's going to be one of those things that it's going to be 24/7, 365 for me. But it's all good.
Yeah, it's never going to end for us now. Well, dude, you shot a heck of a buck last year. Like, what were your keys to success on that buck? Because, just like you were talking about him hiding, it's also timing. And I know you went in there early and didn't find any shooters and finally timed it right. And in your episode, that hunt just dropped on Beyond the Grid too, right?
Yeah, it did. Yeah, that was a Montana hunt, and I wanted to hunt it early, just because, like we talk about in the course, those summer bucks in velvet, they're out in the open a little bit more, they're a little bit lax, and so that gives me an opportunity to not miss bucks, meaning I can go into country and I might spend, a morning and an evening and feel confident that I'm seeing everything if I can work the terrain good enough. And so that's why I like hunting early. And, whether or not you find a good one to kill or not, that's one thing. But I feel like that's your best chance. And that's what's cool about Montana is you have a 6-week archery season and then you have a 5-week rifle season. And so you have so much time, and you can hunt all phases of the mule deer's cycle from, velvet to post rut, basically, or at least to the, peak of the rut. And, I wanted to hunt it before rifle season kicked in, and October is a hard time. That's when I ended up harvesting my buck. But I think in that scenario, last year it was really dry, and those bucks were concentrated by the lake there, and that helped me out. But that country, it has so much relief, there's so much topography to it, and they can hide in all these coulees and cuts, and you have to look into all that country to find them all. You just can't get a master vantage and cover it thoroughly. There's too much going on, there's too much terrain, it's too vast. And so you have to just put the miles in. And ultimately, that's what I was doing, is just getting down to the end of the areas that I was checking. And sure enough, those older, more mature bucks that just have an extra year or two on the rest of them, they're in those hard to reach places. They're in those tight canyons bedding where, they never get messed with. They probably never see a person coming in there. And the only way that you're going to find them is if you stumble upon that coulee. And that's exactly what happened to find the buck that I did.
Man, so you were running like a mobile vantage point in that country. So you were covering country morning and night, and then glassing those coulees as you came up, make sure there isn't any bucks or no shooters in there, and then keep moving.
Yep. And for sure. And so it's by feel, like you said, by timing, but you're believing in what you're doing is going to pay off. You're believing in the process. And we talk all about that in the mule deer courses too, but it's a feel thing, right? Like you might be like, oh, there's nothing good here. And you keep going. But, I'm seeing deer numbers. I'm seeing bucks. It's secluded enough. I know I'm a long ways away from any road. And so I'm thinking that, man, this has everything that it needs to have to hold that next level mature buck that I'm looking for. And so I'm going to cover this thoroughly. I mean, that's my thought process exactly. And so, you can see a lot from, a ridge top or the truck even way out there. But yeah, you can only probably see half of it. You just have to walk out there. And it was just believing that there was going to be a good one in there. And yeah, it paid off.
It is done so much on feel. I get so many questions like, how long do you sit on a vantage point? How long do you sit before you move? And they're like really tough questions to answer because the answer is always different. It's always like what I feel. Is the terrain bucky? Have I seen smaller bucks in there? Have I do I believe there's a buck in there where I need to stay, or do I feel like I've covered it really good during a prime time and it's time for me to move on? But a lot of it is dictated by instincts, and then so much of these hunts, like, they never go quite as planned. Like, you make a plan, you get on X, and you say, well, I'm going to go here, and I'm going to look there. They just never go by the script that you lay out. It seems like you always have to get there, and then you have to adapt to the conditions that you're seeing. You have to adapt to the terrain you're seeing in real time, adapt to the deer sightings you're seeing, or the sign. And, like, so much of this game on these hunts is adapt and overcome, it feels like.
Oh my gosh, yeah. that's what it is. And that kind of, as you're talking about e-scouting like that and getting on X, and it's obviously a great tool. Like it's just made life so much easier nowadays. But the bottom line, in my experience, you will not find where the deer are by looking at the computer. You need to get out there and get boots on the ground, because let me tell you, you're in for a lot of surprises. I think I was on plan like R by the time I found the buck I was looking for over a course of 7 days, and I exhausted everything e-scouting wise. And you just don't know. I mean, e-scouting, you don't know what pressure is going to be like. You don't know where the deer are actually going to be. You might see some place that looks good on the aerial imagery, but you get in there and there's nothing. It's a ghost town. And that could be because they've been spooked out of there, or they're just not there, or maybe it was a dry year and they're not doing what they normally do. There's just so much going on. And so, yeah, you still have to be able to move about the country and know what to look for and kind of get a feel for the trend of what you're seeing. And you have high expectations to finding a 180, right? That's what we all dream about, is just to have a chance at a 180. And you get a limited entry unit and you're hunting it, and you've spent 6-7 days and you haven't even seen a 170. And so you're like, okay, well, maybe I need to bring my expectations down a little bit. It's been a dry year. Obviously the deer are concentrated more around the water. And so it's just a fluid thing. You're constantly changing, constantly evolving, but ultimately that's what leads to success.
Oh, it sure is. Yeah, e-scouting is great to find likely spots, but you just can't see bucks on OnX imagery, So you find these likely spots, and I even, then it's your job to go check out these spots and figure out where the deer are, and it's especially like tough in that unit that you had, because I know, like, by the way you describe it, like all the coulees and all the draws and the breaks in and through there. Like, really, it's all good deer habitat. It's not like looking at mountain terrain where you can look at a bold basin and go, there's a really good chance I'm going to find the bucks in one of these 3 drainages. Instead, you look at that country and it's just it's all the same. It's 100 square miles and it's all good mule deer terrain.
Yeah, it's so vast and it all looks good and they could literally be anywhere. It's like, man, where do you start? And you just got to slowly chip away at the list. And like I said, until you get to plan R.
Man, that's totally it. Like, so much of this hunting is adapting or just keeping your head in the game, and you just got to keep theorizing and keep going and keep putting forth the effort. And it's easy to throw in that towel, especially in our younger years, but once you've tasted success and you know what it takes, really it's just continuing to put forth effort day after day, continuing to theorize, trying to come up with, okay, the deer aren't here. Where am I going to look next? Where do I have to check off? Like, what's my next game plan? What is my game plan M or N or R or whatever it is? Like, and then you go there and you go check it out, and it just seems like eventually you turn up a good buck or a good bull or whatever it is. But that's public land Western hunting at its finest.
Yep, absolutely. I got a chuckle out of it too. I wanted to get your feedback on what you thought on that shot. And like for me, like looking at it, that buck, he saw something, whether he's heard something or saw something. It's tough with, having a camera guy behind you. You know how that goes. And I don't like shooting at alert mule deer, especially like, beyond 30 or 40 yards, just because they're good at jumping that string. And that buck, as I worked in on him, and he was kind of just holding his own, and he was a little bit curious, and he wasn't too flighty. But right when I drew back and I felt like it was all coming together and it was time to make a shot, he moved a little bit and he jumped the string, and he kind of went from broadside to quartering to slightly, and then he jumped the string, and that arrow impacted him straight on, right in the chest, frontal. And I mean, that could have gone bad too. And so it seems like, you can do everything right, but still when that arrow's in flight, I mean, there's just a percentage of that shot that is completely out of your control.
Man, isn't that the truth? Yeah, and mule deer are notorious for jumping strings. Like, I believe it's 1 in 3, maybe 1 in 4 at best with the quiet bows nowadays jump the string. And now I believe, I don't think there's any difference from a relaxed deer to an alert deer. Like, I have had just as bad, had deer jump the string just as bad that had no idea I was there. I can remember one in the high country that it was like around a 50-yard shot, and he rolled like your deer did, but he rolled out of the way of the arrow, and my arrow missed in front of him. He was completely broadside when I shot at him, and that deer had no idea I was there. And I had another one that I shot at in his bed that didn't know I was there, and I had a good shot at his vitals in his bed. And I shot at him in his bed, no idea I was there, and he jumped to get out of his bed and dang near got out of the way of my arrow. I thought I missed him low, but I ended up clipping him low and getting him just good enough, and he died. But you can watch it. You can watch that arrow headed towards the center of him, and he goes to bolt out of there, and then the arrow hits him low. So for me, I've killed just as many deer that know I'm there. Like, at the end of a stalk for me, I love to have a deer. I love to keep the element of surprise, have that deer not know I'm there, not be looking in my direction when I draw my bow. But there is this case where you get busted right at the end. Like, you've made it into your bow range, and a deer picks you off, and he stands up, and he's broadside, and he's looking in my direction, and it's like now or never. And so, I just try to keep my movements really slow. I don't make any big movements. I don't walk around a tree. I try to draw my bow really slow, settle my pin really slow, and then execute my shot. But I've killed a bunch of mule deer doing that are highly alert mule deer that didn't jump the string. So to me, I don't correlate them being on edge with jumping my string. I think a deer can jump my string whether he's relaxed or on edge.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good point. I felt like the buck that I shot in that video, he just had that upper hand on me where he had me pinned and he was ready to go, and he made it a long ways. And I've had it too. They spin the other direction, and like you say, the arrow goes right by him, you miss him. And it was an extreme, I mean, that's some extreme movement, but it's like axis deer too. It's the same thing. I mean, if you don't have some major noise, whether it's like, cover noise from a crick or high wind noise, it's like, yeah, they're going to hear you to some extent and jump, aren't they?
Yes, yeah, more times than not. And I heard, Randy Ulmer's killed so many big mule deer. The guy is like a big mule deer legend. I was listening to him on a podcast, and he was beside himself. He had shot at a mule deer that jumped his string. He hit it back. He lost it, and he was just beside himself. But he was saying that he thinks 1 out of 2, like 50% of the mule deer or more, jump his string. And he was playing around with trying to shoot him further rather than closer to not jump his string. And you could tell, like, he has killed so many big mule deer, and so proficient with his bow on so many different animals, and he's such a good shot, but you could tell he was just lost from losing that deer, that he didn't know which way to turn because he's had so many mule deer jump his string. And here's this big buck he had been after for day after day, played it really patient, got a good shot on it at like 40 some yards if my memory's right, and it had jumped the string and he got it high and back, and he ended up losing that buck, and he was just beside himself over it. But to hear him talk about mule deer jumping the string, he goes through the same thing, but he was thinking it was more like 60 or 70% jump your string. I was like, man, you have worse odds than I do. I was thinking like about 33% or 25% will jump my string. And sometimes, they jump your string or they move, but they're just too late, or they move into the arrow, like your buck jumped the string and reacted to the shot and you still got him. And that's the best case scenario, is when they do jump the string and you still get them, or that buck that jumped out of his bed on me and I still pinned him low and he, ended up getting him. And so, not every buck that jumps your string gets out of the way of the arrow either.
Yeah, exactly. You still end up with kills and you end up with misses, and God forbid you wound one, but it makes you shake your head at the end of the day, and you just on those ones that you make a clean kill like that. I'm just kind of chuckling and smiling on my way home of, that's bow hunting. It's sometimes it goes really well and other times you miss. That's just, you can't get good at that. You can't master that portion. Sometimes things just happen because they happen.
I think it's really good to have that in the course, or to have like us talking about it on the podcast too. I think missing is inevitable. Failure is inevitable in bow hunting. Like, it is gonna happen, And for so many years, it was just portrayed on TV. Like, I remember talking to this real proficient bow hunter that told me he hasn't missed in 15 years or something like that. I was like, man, I don't know, like, maybe I'm not doing it right, but that just doesn't seem realistic to me. But it was portrayed for so long in TV that these bow hunters were perfect, that they didn't miss, that they were so good at their craft that they made every shot. And that's just not the case with every good bow hunter I've ever met. Every good bow hunter that I've had an authentic, genuine conversation, like, you miss deer. They get out of the way of the arrows. We mess up our shots. We miscalculate. Excitement gets us. The pin doesn't settle as good. And I think it's good to share those experiences because, bow hunters that are getting into it that maybe don't have as many kills, they might expect this perfection when perfection isn't something that you can't expect in bow hunting. Like, you are gonna miss, and two, to be able to pick yourself up from it. Like, I've been successful on a lot of hunts where I have had a miss, and I pick myself up, I get back after it, and I get another shot, and I make it happen. Like to me, one of the best traits of a bow hunter is being persistent, just keeping after it, keeping your head in the game. But I think it's like really important to share that with guys that, I may be a good bow hunter, but I still can miss. I can still duff a shot, and I want to show that authenticity as well, and share that with guys. So when they miss, they're not down in the dumps. And I get messages from guys that beat themselves up, and we all beat ourselves up. I hate to miss as well, but you think I've heard Joe Montana speak, or Tom Brady. Like, not every throw he makes is a touchdown pass. He doesn't win every game, but he's good enough to pick himself up and throw that touchdown pass the next time. And you almost, like, you have to learn from your misses, but you also have to forget about them. They're in the past. All you can do is control the now or control the next shot. And so I think it's really important to, like, focus on your execution of that next shot, what you're going to do correctly, and then go out and make that shot. But we all miss.
Yep. Yeah, it's a part of it. There's just nothing that you can do about it. When you're out there, one-on-one with, it doesn't matter what you're hunting. And there's just too many things that are out of your control. It's bound to happen. It's part of it. And yeah, ultimately it's how you pick yourself up and continue on with a positive attitude. And that's what truly defines success.
Well, yeah, and it's you can stand in the backyard and just put dots in there at 60, at 70, whatever the range is, and be really accurate. It's just a different thing in the mountains on uneven terrain and on slopes and on live critters. The pin doesn't settle as good on a live critter. It's just it's tough to become proficient, and it takes years and years of working at it and improving your game. And I think, being a good bow hunter, it is living this bow hunting lifestyle 365. And just like you stated at the very beginning of the podcast, it's being a student of the game and always learning and always trying to get better. But I still, Dan, I've never had a perfect season where every arrow I released was a perfect arrow. I've been close, and I do, just like you, I do a bunch of bow hunts a year, maybe 5 to 10, but I'm yet to have a perfect season where every arrow I released was perfect.
Yeah, I think it's almost impossible. I mean, if you hunt enough, you do, enough hunts like what we do. I mean, last year, my Wyoming mule deer hunt, I got one chance, and I shot under his belly. Who knows, a variety of reasons. There was some wind and uneven terrain, like you said, and I was cramped up and I was cold. I mean, you can sit here and make excuses, but if you do it enough, you're bound to miss. I missed a whitetail too. I rattled in this whitetail buck and I didn't have time to range. It was one of those scenarios where it was now or never. I mean, you had time to draw, and it was in this tall sage, and it was hard to judge, and I shot over his back. And it was just a split second chance that I had, but it was perfectly broadside. And I thought he was 45, but he was more like 35. And I shot right over him. And so if you do this stuff enough, especially in these rush scenarios when you have to, act now or forever hold your peace, it's bound to happen. Odds go up to miss when, when it happens quick, plain and simple. I remember that you had a similar thing in Idaho that one year, that big buck below the cliff there. Sometimes you have to react quick, and it might be a good shot, a good presentation, but you don't have the time to range. And so you just have to make a judgment call on yardage and do your best.
Yeah, you've got yourself set up for those, like a lot of that those quick shots that come, or that. Like I don't think I'm as good in that aspect as you, as thinking quick or judging yardage. I'm just like, I'm better if I can get a range, if I can shoot. But see, you have your bow set up and you have a little bit longer draw length. You've got a little bit more speed, a little bit flatter trajectory, and then you're good at thinking on your feet or thinking quick, judging that yardage. I've seen you kill quite a few animals where you've judged that yardage and then killed that animal. It seems like that's when my mistakes come a lot. When I make those mistakes is when things happen quick and I've got to judge, and it's like, oh, I think he's 40, and I shoot and I miss or airball. But you're pretty good in those situations.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's 50-50. I mean, sometimes you make a good shot and sometimes you miss, and luckily both of those were clean misses, but that's part of it. And I do pride myself on being ready, because when you're in the zone, your shot window can be so small. It might be a half a second, and that could be your shot opportunity for 7 days of effort. And so I've always focused on that, and always just try to not get tunnel vision when I get close to an animal, because I know I'm going to have to capitalize. Sometimes I'm going to have to capitalize in a short amount of time. And yeah, it's worked out well for me, with a little Kentucky windage on my bow setup, my single pin slider, knowing my trajectory.
Yeah.
And yeah, other times it just, you miss them. But, Yeah, it's definitely difficult.
Well, it is important. Like, I think the one thing we both have is that killer instinct. And as you're describing that, it makes me think of it is like, you can't force a shot. You don't want to force it in branches or force a bad angle. Like, that's a recipe for disaster. But you also, you're just looking for this sliver of opportunity. Just give me a chance to place this arrow. And it's like this killer instinct when you get in close, where you're really looking for that shot, you're really looking for that angle, you're really looking to capitalize on an opportunity. And a lot of times it isn't waiting till it's perfect, it's seeing your window where you can place that arrow and kill that animal, and placing that arrow right in that window. And so, yeah, I think that's the one thing that we've both developed, is this killer instincts. And when we go on these hunts, like, we've got a pretty high success rate of making it happen when we get inside those zones. And I think that being clutch, or having that killer instinct, or developing that killer instinct, is so important to consistent success.
Yeah, it absolutely is. You could go years of unsuccessful hunts if you were to wait for the perfect broadside 25-yard shot while you have 10 seconds to make a shot. I mean, in reality, those situations where they're close and you have all the time in the world, I mean, they're nice, but in reality, it doesn't really happen like that very often.
Oh, you're spot on. No, it's the exception, not the rule, right? You always think as you're bow hunting, and I've learned throughout the years, and I know you have too, but I always think when I'm bow hunting, I just need to get into range. I just need to get into range of the buck I want, and I'll make it happen. And then you start to learn that getting in range is just half the battle. Like, these deer, or elk or antelope or whatever they are, they're always moving. They're always on the other side of the doe. There's another deer in the way. There's limbs that are going to hit your arrow. It's just like never perfect. It's absolute chaos when you're in bow range and you are on limited time, and it's, you have to make 100 right decisions to place that perfect arrow into that animal. And that can just be where you set up, on your knees or standing, or where you set up with limbs in front of you. There's just like 100 right decisions you have to make it come together. But it is like being clutch in those moments, really looking for that window. Deer always moving, but when you see that window, it's time to draw back and execute that shot and put a good arrow in them. But man, it's so fun playing the game, isn't it? Like, bow hunting is so difficult, and you're right, you can go years without finding any success without a bow and arrow. In fact, that's the norm. So to find it, season after season, you just pick up these little tips and tidbits and tricks, and you flip that switch to where, when you're in bow range, you're really looking for that vital shot on that animal and to make it happen.
Yep. Just that your senses are heightened, and once you do it more and more and more, you get better at finding those windows and being more confident and anticipating. I mean, you know how big anticipation is when it comes down to the moment of truth. You have to see it happening before it happens, and then you got to make it happen. And it just comes with just time. That's all it is.
Yeah, that's it. Man, it was sure a fun stalk I got. Like, just it's been like a couple weeks ago. That high country, I had Josiah with me, and it was tough hunting in there for sure. Like, the lightning storms were gnarly, and this is like where experience came into play. It was so killer, Dan. So I found this buck, and he was in the spring, and I knew he was a shooter. He's the best buck I had seen. He was really heavy, and he was older, had this big body, already had his gray coat on. I was going to be super stoked with him, and so he was in a place where I couldn't get around him. From where I glassed him up, it would have taken me 3 hours, and we had an hour and a half of light, and so went looking for him the next day. And I couldn't believe it was the same buck, because he had moved 1.5 miles from there, even though nobody had spooked him. And I think he had moved to this spring to drink, and that's where I glassed him. But I found him all the way on the other side of the ridge, 1.5 miles away, and he was just in this sliver little meadow, just barely caught him. He was with the same 2-point in there, and And so there was bad storms forecasted for that day, and so I knew the wind was going to get fickle and lightning storms. I wouldn't have been able to be on the ridge, and so a lot of times I want to find them in their afternoon bed. But this time around, he bedded, first thing in the morning, and it's early, like it's like 7:30 or even 8. And he bedded in a pretty good spot. I didn't know his exact position, but I knew the small little group of trees he was in. I knew, the 50 yard by 50 yard, there's 2 bucks that are bedded in there. And so I made this play around, but it was wild how I used this higher understanding of the wind. And we talk about it, in the course, we talk about wind extensively. But I knew that the valley floor was heating up. I knew I'd have uphill thermals. But as I was making my way over there, the winds were totally wrong. And as I rounded the peak, the winds from the other side of the ridge were overpowering. So when I blew my wind checker, it looked like the wind was going straight from me to that deer. And I told Josiah, I said, we're going to get down off this top. Those thermals are going to be right in our face. Like, don't worry about it. We're going to be good. And so I just kept on this stalk, and I kept moving down, knowing what the winds were going to be doing when I got down there. And pretty soon I get down there, and the winds are just screaming up at my face, and I blowing the wind checker right in front of Josiah, and I'm like, oh, man, we got the wind. Here we go, And so we roll down a little bit further, and then my stalk, I take this hard right and I go down this cliff face and then bend around this cliff to where this buck is. And as I started going down this cliff face, the cliff was almost blocking the thermal winds, and it was a little bit shaded in this micro draw. And again, the wind's fickle and it's blowing from me to the deer. And I told Josiah, I'm like, hey, this draw, this rock face, it's affecting the wind. We're going to get around this cliff face and we're going to have good wind again. And sure enough, we get around the cliff face, and I'm not 100% sure that's what it's going to do, but I'm like 90 or 95% sure what that's going to do. So when you get around the cliff face and then all of a sudden the wind's back up in our face, I'm just like, oh, right on, here we go. So we work into this group of trees where we know this buck is, and we're just like the hands of the clock, like so slow, glassing every step, just trying to pick him up. And I catch the buck down below us, and he's about 100 or 130 yards down below us. He had actually moved down a little bit. We actually caught him moving beds. He just got to his feet. And again, those morning beds, that's why it's tough to kill deer in morning beds, because they don't sit there as long as the afternoon beds. And so, maybe took us, 40 minutes to get around, 30 minutes, something like that, and he was already changing beds, and he changed down below us. So we loop around, we use the hill, the topography to get back around on him, and get in close, and we get into bow range. But it's it's a 40-degree slope is what I ended up shooting him downhill. We get positioned above him, and then I can see him laying there, and we get in the spot, and we're just waiting for him to stand. He has no idea we're there. And really, I didn't have to wait too long, 20, 30 minutes. The 2-point came up and nosed him and kind of was bugging him, and finally he gets up. He's in the way of the 2-point, but then he moves and he gives me this good broadside shot. And so, yeah, I executed my shot and zipped, and I heard rocks on the shot. Like, I was like, man, did I miss him? And he just disappeared, and then he didn't move. He just stayed still. And I couldn't really see him through there, but I knew he was right there. And then he walked out and walked into another window, another range on him. I zipped him again down and through there. That one hit like center, and then he ran out and tipped over. And this buck, he rolled 200 yards down the hill, head over heels. He busted one of his tines on the back. In the picture, the velvet's actually holding it up. And but he just rolled down the hill. And to me, it's like more about the adventure than anything, but rolled down the hill. It was a quick death. And, I still wasn't sure the first shot. It's like I heard rocks on it, and we went up, and there was 2 holes right in them. The one was low in the brisket, but a good shot, and the other one was a little bit back and came out right on the heart and killed him and zipped him twice. But it's just that knowledge, like this understanding of mule deer terrain and mule deer country. So that was my one stock for the trip, and we were able to make it happen.
Oh, that's awesome. Like I said, it's hard to teach that, what the wind is doing in terrain. And I think a lot of guys would hit a situation like that and the wind's going down and they're not even going to try because maybe they're just overlooking, those prevailing winds and the thermals or whatever the case may be. And it's hard to predict. Like you say, you're 90% sure. And just you've done it a lot, and so you have a good hunch. But knowing how those little cuts and those little coulees and those rock faces channel wind and make wind walls, I like to call them, where you're getting up close to an animal and you have a bad wind, but you have like a solid natural barrier between you and the animal. And that natural barrier could be like a small canyon, and knowing that even though the wind is at your back, you know, in that canyon or that avalanche slide, the wind is going to be going up or down because you got timber on both sides, and you know that your scent's good. Like, it's not going to get to that buck. And those are things that just come with experience, right? I mean, that's just getting a feel for, you know, what the wind's doing by just being out there and experiencing that.
God, that's really what I felt, Dan. It was like all my years of experience came into play on that stock, like having this higher understanding of the wind. And, you know, I also think you can learn it from, you know, places like the podcast or the course, like to have this, you know, to realize, okay, like Brian isn't just like checking the wind and then that's the wind that he's going by. He's actually has this higher understanding of what the winds are doing, you know, in these canyons and in these draws and the thermals and the directionals. And just being aware of that, like, gosh, if I could have read that in a book and been able to apply that 10 years ago, like, I would have had a bunch more bucks to my credit or bulls to my credit. And you know, it just worked out on that one. And it doesn't always work out. Like you say, 90% sure. I definitely, with wins, I could have hit that 10% as well. But I really felt like my experience came into play on that buck. But yeah, it was just such a beautiful stock and beautiful hunt, backpack hunt, you know, the truest for like for me, like just the funnest way to go bow hunting, you know. It's like just you and your backpack and going in these mountains and disappearing and then be able to harvest the best buck that I saw. Man, it was so awesome. I know you got some good hunts coming up, man. You leave here in a few days, don't you?
Yeah, yep. Yeah, headed down south, going in on an elk hunt. I still don't know if I'm going to have a deer tag or not. If I was going to try to get a hold of a landowner voucher. Yeah, elk hunting, horse drop in. It should be fun. It looks like, man, it's been really wet down there this year. So I'm sure we're going to have some weather. Sounds like you had some weather in Nevada, and it's just one of those years. I don't know about up there in Ennis, but we've been so wet down here in the desert by Cody. It's crazy. I've never seen anything like it.
It's a one of a kind for sure. Yeah, it's going to come with its own set of challenges this season, isn't it?
Definitely. And, you know, you're living at 11,000 feet, and I'm sitting here wondering, you know, how many of those 7 days are we going to be just fogged out, not being able to do anything. But that's part of the reason why you go for 7 days. So hopefully you get, you know, at least a 2 or 3 day window where you have some good quality hunting and maybe a few more half days. If you hit it right. But, yeah, that's kind of the first hunt. And then, just elk, Wyoming, Montana. I'll be hitting her hard. But yeah, I'm missing out on the deer a little bit this year. I should be hunting my home state this year, but, for mule deer. But, down in Colorado, just doing a new adventure, kind of one of those things where always searching for one new hunt, one new location, to do a year. And I mean, that's a part of adventure bow hunting. That's a big reason why I know you love it too, is just new locations and new places, new scenery. And it's just such a huge part of it, to me. So I enjoy the new hunts.
You're so good at it as well, Dan. Like, it's not easy to go to all these different places and find success like you do. And, I like hunting all these different species. And you do have a deer hunt coming up in Montana that I remember you told me about. But yeah, it's, these elk, like, gosh, you got to take advantage of it, you know, and what a cool way, like, you know, creative thinking is rewarded in Western hunting. And so, like, just listening to your hunts this year, like you've lined up a horseback hunt way deep in the backcountry in some spot you've never been. Like that's creative thinking. That's outside the box thinking to hire a horse guy or to bring horses down, or I'm not sure how you're doing. I know you get Ike to haul you in and out in quite a few like gnarly places in Wyoming too, which is just killer. But that's what it takes. It's continuing to go, continuing to theorize, think outside the box, and man, you are always going on an adventure to bow hunt somewhere, and that's why when we get together, it's all we can talk about is bow hunting, these different species in these different spots. So, man, and I hope you are able to pick up that landowner tag. You say you're still not sure if you're going to be able to get it or not.
Yeah, it's just been a communication thing down there, trying to get a hold of the right landowner that has a tag, and it's not like a coveted area or anything like that, but it's like, yeah, you're going to be at tree line or above tree line. You might as well have a deer tag in your pocket. You never know what's going to be up there. And of course, if you don't have a tag, you're going to see a good buck.
Guaranteed.
Yeah, I have a whitetail tag in Wyoming too. And yeah, Montana and later in October. So I'll still get out and hunt deer too. It's kind of like one of those things. I've been missing the antelope the last couple of years. I just haven't been able to draw a tag, but it's like if you don't hunt antelope, mule deer, and elk in one fall, you're missing something. So at least I have one mule deer tag, and like I say, missing the antelope this year, but we'll get after the elk hard.
Yeah, you got some good elk hunts coming up. And man, your home state in Wyoming, I don't know if anybody's more dialed on elk in that state than you are. Gosh dang it, you turn up some bulls year after year. So I'm sure you're excited to hunt your home state as well. What are you planning September dates for that one?
Yeah, mid-September. Once again, new unit. Some people think I'm crazy because I hop around all the time, but I try to hunt a new unit every year. And, I look for burns. I like to focus in burns, and it's always good to have local intel if you can get a hold of some. And but yeah, just another horse drop type hunt. We're actually going to run with horses back in there for a week and see what happens. But potential for really big bulls, and who knows? You never know what you're going to run into 12 miles back in Grizz country. And it's kind of one of those things I think I've slowly become addicted to, is you head into an area new for the first time and you kind of have that lump in your throat and a pit in your stomach, and you don't know. I mean, you might not come out. I mean, that's always a possibility.
Oh, yeah.
But, a little adrenaline. I guess we're all adrenaline junkies to a point, and it's that adventure part too. It's, why I love going into the unknown and just seeing what you're going to encounter and what you're going to experience back there, and in such wild places and such cool things can happen back there, and cool wildlife sightings. And that's the stuff that I live for it.
I know you do. Yeah, you're we're cut from the same cloth, or grown from the same branch, or however you want to say it. But yeah, we both have that adventure in our
Yep.
blood. Like, and I think it's an adventurous spirit. I think it's human nature. Like, I love to explore. I love to go to new places, and I have units that I go back to, but I hardly ever hunt it the same way. I hardly ever hunt the same. And if I'm going back to a unit I've been, there's always somewhere else I want to go, over the ridge line or over into new basins, or to a new part of the unit. I think I love to explore as well, Dan, and it is an adventure. And you say like you might not come back, and that's a reality. Like pulling out of your driveway, we both have wives and kids, and like it is real when you're immersing yourself in nature, and especially like the grizzly terrain that you live in, that I live in. It is a possibility that you have to consider, and I think it's like part of the beautiful thing is it's not Nerf back there. We get to be wild men back there. We get to go cover country, and hunting is in our DNA. Like, it's the reason we've survived for 200,000 years. There is something primitive and visceral about it, like being out there. Like, I think it's the most intense interaction with nature you can get when you're playing this predator prey game, you know. And both me and you have been hooked on it, and there's nothing in my life that has ever driven me or ever given me such purpose as like backcountry bow hunting. And it's so difficult. Like, it's the challenge of it, and it's the theorizing, the creative thinking, the exploring, the adventure, like all of it, man. It's just like, and it's here right in front of us right now. We've been waiting all year for it, and it's fall right now. You're leaving for a hunt. You'll be hunting throughout the fall on a bunch of good adventures. I'm sure you're going to turn up some great animals. But man, it's the beauty of it. Like, we get to go do what we truly love to do. We've been waiting for it all year long.
Yeah, just a year's worth of planning. And it seems like as soon as one hunt's over, I'm thinking about next year. I'm thinking about what I could do different, or maybe, a different state, or, whatever it might be. But it's a lifestyle. It's a disease, if you want to call it that. Our wives would probably call it that.
It definitely is a sickness, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Dan, you're the man. Dude, it's always so fun to talk to you. Like, really consider you a good friend, and I really appreciate like your insight. I know like you've helped a buddy of mine, this season. I've also, used some information for, like, you've given me information on tags and hunts that I've had in the past that have helped me succeed. And dude, you're a really good friend, a great bow hunter, and just happy to know you, man.
Man, thanks, Brian. I sure appreciate it. I feel the same way about you. You're my bow hunting brother, and I love bouncing ideas off you and talking. Just like you said, we get together and we just geek out over it. And it's fun to have somebody you can do that with that spends the time and has been doing it a while, and we're learning from each other. And it's just part of it. Camaraderie's huge. And yeah, I appreciate it. I definitely feel the same way.
Right on, man. Well, yeah, wish you good hunting this season. Let's keep in touch. And yeah, thanks a bunch for jumping on, and thanks for all your hard work and effort on that mule deer course, man. It really turned out better than I could have even imagined. So I'm so proud at how that came out. So really appreciate all your work on that. Yeah, man, we'll just keep in touch.
Yeah, sounds good. It was fun doing it with you. And yeah, you have a full plate this fall too, and be safe and have fun out there. Shoot straight. I know you will.
Cool. All right. Thanks, Dan.
You bet.
All right, guys, it's a wrap. Fun podcast with Dan Pickar. Really like that guy. Always like sitting down with him. I always like visiting with him. Like I say, he's just a great hunter. He has just willed himself into a place where he's consistently successful, and we can learn a lot from that. So I really like these conversations I get to have with him. So thanks to Dan for taking the time and being on. And Dan is a heck of an elk hunter, too. Got to get him back on for an elk podcast, and we'll get him on shortly for that. And I need to get out a solo elk podcast for you guys, too. So I'll try to get that released next week. And I haven't talked about my early season mule deer or just harvested an antelope as well. That's been a good season so far, so I need to get on and visit about that. So I'll get that recorded, maybe release that to you guys next week. And with that, I want to thank our sponsors. So I want to thank Cryptek, great system I have built there. If you guys are in the market for anything camo, make sure to check them out. Also, check out Black Rifle Coffee Company, a great company that supports us outdoorsmen and just has the best roast, the best coffee, the best instant coffee. So impressed by it. Check out Black Ovis. I used their game bags on the last couple hunts, work flawlessly. They have absolutely everything you need for your hunt. They have all the top brands. Again, they have their point system. 1 point is $1. You can also do reviews to pick up a couple points or a couple dollars off your next order. You can put in the promo code Elevated10, save 10% on your order, so save you a few bucks there. And also check out Camo Fire. It's their app where they do 80 different hunting deals every 24 hours. There's some stuff that goes for great deals here, top brands, so check that out as well. And check us out over at Eastmans. Everything we got going on, constantly working to get better and bring you guys the best information. So we've got the hunting journals, the Tag Hub internet research tool. We've got the Mule Deer School now, which I have a big part in, which I'm really proud of. Our Beyond the Grids, our Eastman's Hunting TV on the Outdoor Channel. You can check us out at all those places. So, man, with that, I'm getting this podcast out, and I'm going to try to get out of here for a long weekend and go hunt some mule deer. So super stoked fall is here. It's been a great season so far. Busy, but managing, and definitely getting out and enjoying nature, like the most intimate like experience you can go get in nature is this predator prey. And like it's been really fun chasing these pronghorn. I don't know, I maybe got 5 days in or something like that, but just playing the game, cat and mouse, and looking for a good buck. And then it really helps sharpen my stalking skills. Like every year, they're humbling, man. They're so crafty. It's like you think of looking over a rise and they catch you. They're so good at what they do and surviving in these prairies. But there's just nothing better to me than being out on the prairie, tag in pocket, bow in hand, and chasing these black-horned antelope. Like all these species I get to hunt and all these different habitats are just amazing. But yeah, I had a pretty special antelope hunt the other day and harvested a really nice buck, and man, it's just so fun. So I know you guys got some hunts coming up. I'm going to leave on this mule deer hunt. Going to go with my buddy Dan Havren. And so he's going to show up at the house, I think, tomorrow morning. I got so many deals in the works here. So trying to get everything taken care of, be in front of my work, still handle all my responsibilities, and then go out and cut loose and have some fun and hunt a bit too. So so far so good. We're managing and into the fall season. So man, I just wish you guys the best. I'd share your success with me if you're able to arrow something this season. And man, pulling for you guys. So thanks so much for the support of the podcast, social media, everything I do. I just appreciate it so much. That's so humbling as well to be able to build this podcast and have a writing in the outdoor industry and have you guys reading my stuff, watching my stuff, listening. It's just amazing, man. So I really appreciate you guys and wish you all the best. And with that, I'll check in with you guys next week.